The first week of the Winter Olympics are wrapping up in Beijing. The Games have presented a variety of challenges, including containing the spread of COVID-19 and addressing security concerns for athletes and reporters. Plus, China has faced backlash over its repeated human rights abuses. That said, the Games continue. And joining me now from Beijing is Philip Crowther, Associated Press International Affiliate reporter. Philip, great to see you. I know you recently arrived in Beijing. Can you set the scene for us? What's the atmosphere there like?
Yeah, look, I mean, it looks like I'm in the middle of the street outside of the Bird's Nest, the big national stadium you can see right behind me. But really, I am in something called the closed loop. It's a bubble relatively similar to what we experienced in the summer in Tokyo. What that means is that we, the athletes and officials, have absolutely no contact with the local population. Strict COVID-19 guidelines here in China. So it's frustrating, of course, but it's the way that China was able to organize these Winter Olympic Games, because those COVID rules, in theory, would have led to pretty much everybody having to go into quarantine for a whole 3 weeks. So I couldn't actually tell you what these Olympic Games feel like from within Beijing. I don't know from personal perspective what people make of these Olympic Games. Of course, this is a lot like Tokyo. There aren't a lot of spectators in these arenas. There are a few that are allowed inside, but no foreigners allowed inside of China for these Olympic Games. And let me just give you one example of how few foreigners can get into China right now. I came over on a plane with 14 passengers on board. It's quite extraordinary. And one thing I saw from the window, by the way, one of the ski areas. You might have seen these aerial pictures before. It's arid out there, about 80 kilometers from where I am right now. It's all artificial snow that's being used for the skiing events. There is no natural snow so far for these Winter Olympics. That is quite extraordinary.
You know, one thing I want to bring up back again, Philip, you had mentioned COVID-19. What exactly is the situation when it comes to infections in athletes? What more do you know about that and what's being done about it?
Well, look, there have been very few positive cases. Essentially, this closed-loop system, after 1 week of these Winter Olympics here in China, it's working. There have been no major outbreaks. There's been nothing, very much like what happened in Tokyo during the Summer Games. Organizers here are very happy with how things are going, because what they want to keep from happening is, first of all, an outbreak among athletes, for example, but also any outbreak then reaching the population of Beijing. That is why we're being kept completely separate from each other. Athletes have got used to it. You have to do daily COVID-19 tests. You have to wear a mask at all times. We're used to it. The athletes are used to it. And that's how things are going here, essentially. These strict COVID-19 rules that were already in place here in China, we're getting to experience them a little bit here now.
And Philip, I know before you got to Beijing, you were in Ukraine, and I understand a Ukrainian athlete displayed a sign that said "No war in Ukraine" to the cameras. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this was an athlete who was participating in the skeleton in one of the ski areas here outside of Beijing. Just a small sign that he had. All it said was "No war in Ukraine." But I believe it is the very first use of this stage by an athlete to make what you could consider a political point. It's not really asking for no war in one's home country, and indeed the International Olympic Committee and the organizers here have seen it that way. He will not be punished. In theory, you're not allowed to use political speech during Olympic Games, but this was seen as a general message against war that was not inappropriate. Now, what this does, of course, and this tends to happen at big sporting events, it's a possibility for athletes, if they want, to bring those problems from their home countries to a bigger stage. He managed to do that. And how timely it was, of course, with what is happening right now in Ukraine and with those warnings coming from the Biden administration right now that a military offensive by Russia into Ukraine could be imminent.
Yes, and we are following that very closely. Another thing I want to touch on also with an athlete, I understand there was a Russian figure skater who tested positive for a drug while competing. Let's talk a little bit more about that and what you know.
Yeah, this is Kamila Valieva. She's an extraordinary athlete, 15 years old. She is the favorite to win in the women's figure skating. That's next week. But she also won with the women's team here, and that was at the beginning of this week. She had tested positive in December in St. Petersburg, but that result was only revealed one day after she won gold with her team here, after an extraordinary performance by her. And this was revealed just before the medal ceremony, by the way, so that had to be postponed. Now we don't know whether she will be allowed to compete any further in these Olympic Games. The Russian anti-doping agency had first suspended her, now want her to continue competing. The International Olympic Committee don't want her competing because there was a positive doping case. So this is going all the way to the highest court of arbitration for sport, and that's where a decision will be made, whether we will see her again on the ice in the next few days. Of course, remember that Russia has a pretty long history of doping scandals during Olympic Games. In fact, the Russian team on paper doesn't exist here. It's the Russian Olympic Committee that is represented here. The Russian flag and the Russian national anthem are not used at Olympic Games.
Well, Philip, so much more we can talk about. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.